Welcome to This Explainer. Look, we're bypassing the fluff today and diving straight into the chilling intersection of supernatural encounters, destructive human malice, and the dimensional theories that attempt to explain them all. Today, we're looking at documented accounts that challenge our fundamental understanding of reality. And we're going to break down exactly what happens when the veil between our world and the unseen is pierced.
So we're kicking things off with a pretty primal question from our source material. What if the empty spaces around us are actually, well, full? What if our eyes just aren't equipped to see the terrifying truth of what's sharing our space? It's a psychological boundary that keeps us safe, but as you'll see today, that boundary can sometimes fail.
Section 1. The Secret of the Locked Room.
Okay, let's get into our first case. Our source details this deeply atmospheric encounter set in a massive village house near Dwarka, Gujarat. The subject? A 10-year-old American-born boy. He's totally unfamiliar with the local customs, the language, or, the dark secrets hiding in his own extended family's home. The setup here is literally straight out of a nightmare. He's left completely alone by his grandmother and her friends while they go out visiting. So this thirsty kid is wandering the quiet, unfamiliar, massive house. Thinking he's found the kitchen, he spots a crack in the molding of this heavy, locked wooden door, and he decides to peek inside. Well, instead of a kitchen, his eyes slowly adjust to the dim light filtering through the crack. And sitting right there in the pitch darkness is an old woman in a black sari. Her face is completely covered in traditional tattoos, and she's just eerily smiling, gesturing with her hands for him to come inside. As you can imagine, the boy is absolutely paralyzed with fear. Suddenly, the dead silence of the house is shattered when she speaks to him from the dark. And here's the thing. She's speaking in a local Gujarati dialect, a language this American-born kid doesn't even understand. But despite the language barrier, he feels the heavy, terrifying intent behind her words. This is where the sensory horror of the whole thing truly peaks. The voice is manipulative, it's coaxing, begging him to just undo the latch. She's actually calling herself his grandmother, offering him water, trying to trick a 10-year-old's mind into making one fatal mistake, opening a door that was locked for a very good reason.
So he bolts for the main entrance to escape, right? But the women had locked it from the outside when they left. As he frantically pulls at the handle, crying out for help, the entity's coaxing voice from deep inside the house suddenly distorts into something aggressive and straight up demonic. The sheer terror of it all causes the boy to just faint, right there on the floor.
But honestly, the real shock comes when the women finally return and wake the boy up. He's frantically explaining what he saw, and instead of panicking, his grandmother just casually laughs it off. She reveals that it was merely the spirit of her deceased mother-in-law. Apparently, the family had a priest lock the spirit in that specific room after she allegedly killed a servant years prior. Crazy, right? They were just living with this entity like it was a normal part of the household.
Section 2. The Shadow of Black Magic.
Now, our source material shifts focus to how human jealousy can literally weaponize the unseen. Let's track this timeline of a prosperous family in Old Delhi to see how these attacks escalate. It starts off small with a simple hex, a packet of nails left at their doorstep. Then, week 3, they find cut hair wrapped up with the eldest daughter's name. By month 2, it escalates to a dead cat in a bag. And finally, absolute tragedy strikes just before the daughter's wedding. A devastating gas cylinder explosion leaves the 20-year-old bride-to-be with 60% burns across her body, and the sheer shock of the event actually put her father into a coma. While the father and daughter are recovering in the hospital, a final, pretty sickening discovery is made back at the house. A cursed packet containing a used sanitary pad with the youngest daughter's name was found hidden under her bed. And get this, it turned out this packet was planted there by a visiting aunt, which proved these horrifying attacks were orchestrated by their own trusted cousin, all out of pure financial jealousy over a successful factory business. Unbelievable.
Section 3. Illusion and Vengeance.
So as our source shows, black magic isn't just about physical harm. It can actually manipulate perception and ruin a household from the inside out. Take this case involving a pregnant IT professional and her husband. After a violent altercation that led to them firing their maid, the couple finds a dark magic diagram right at their door, complete with sindoor, cut lemons, and chilies. The husband accidentally steps right on it, physically piercing his foot with a nail. They try to clean it up and cleanse the space, thinking, the worst is over.
Shortly after that, they hire a seemingly perfect, beautiful 25-year-old maid. But the household dynamic shifts instantly. The husband becomes super distant. He starts locking himself in his home office for hours on end.
And weirdly, he starts wearing full sleeves constantly, completely hiding his torso and arms. Naturally, the pregnant wife, feeling totally isolated, begins to suspect he's having an affair with this new maid.
Now here is the ultimate, horrifying divergence in reality. One afternoon, the wife storms into the office and catches them. But what she sees is her husband sitting with a frail 75-year-old woman. Meanwhile, the husband remains absolutely convinced he's looking at a beautiful 25-year-old. The source later notes that the reason the husband was wearing long sleeves was to hide severe whip marks on his back, a physical toll of the dark illusion he was trapped inside.
To impartially illustrate the spiritual gravity of participating in these acts, the source recounts a famous television broadcast from India. A caller confessed that she had assisted in grave magic, literally hiding hexes inside the mouths of corpses. Her ultimate punishment, she claimed, was a terrifying kind of spiritual blindness. Despite standing right in front of the Kaaba in Mecca, she was rendered physically unable to see it.
Section 4. The Science of Fear.
All right, we've explored the encounters. Now let's analyze the theory behind them provided by the source material. Like, why don't we see these entities every day? What's keeping us separated from this dark reality? To make sense of this, our sources dive into theoretical concepts like astral projection. The hypothesis here is that our consciousness, or our soul, is entirely separate from our carbon-based bodies. And while some claim they can travel independently through astral projection, it's noted that ordinary humans can't easily or safely control this separation while awake.
The theory argues that our physical bodies, specifically our eyes and brains, are strictly limited to a three-dimensional reality. We only use a small fraction of our cognitive capacity, right? But this isn't necessarily a flaw. Actually, these biological limitations act as a necessary protective filter. They literally prevent our brains from being completely overwhelmed by the entities that might currently be sharing our physical space.
Think of the dimensional divide like this. As human beings, we're trapped in linear time within the third dimension. We only know past, present, and future. Conversely, these unseen entities are theorized to exist in the fourth or fifth dimension. They exist entirely outside of linear time, only occasionally piercing the veil and crossing over into our dimensional plane.
The host of the source material makes a really fascinating point here. If individuals, like certain filmmakers or people who dabble in deep force meditation, artificially force their minds to perceive these entities crossing dimensions, the result is rarely enlightenment. Instead, the resulting psychological trauma is often devastating. It leaves them terrified, paranoid, and utterly unable to function in basic daily life. It seems our ignorance is, quite literally, our armor.
Which brings us to the ultimate question you should take away from this whole analysis. It's one of those thoughts that lingers long after the story's end. If our biological filters were suddenly removed and our eyes were forced open to the fourth dimension, could we possibly handle our own reality? Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what lies just beyond your line of sight.